Hello, guys. Welcome back to Christ and Culture. My name is Noah,
And I'm Wes.
and today we're talking a little about love. Wes, there are a lot of things that the world tells us that love is.
Absolutely.
And today we just want to help clear that up a little bit. Now, the world likes to tell us several different things about love. The first of those things is that love is acceptance. That in order to love somebody, you have to accept every single thing about a person in order to actually love them.
You know, that is so contradictory to begin with.
It really is.
Because here's the thing, if somebody absolutely just murdered your best friend or your family member or something of that nature and raped that individual, guess what's going to happen? If you don't accept who they are, you're not loving,
Nope.
according to that definition.
Nope.
And how does that fit?
It really doesn't. It's trying to force someone's reality on someone else. And we see this prevalent with, well, really this whole episode is about what LGBT community has defined as love. But we're talking about what actually love is. But they try to say that love is acceptance, and in all reality, none of the forms of love that we even know about includes acceptance of any kind. A love that includes acceptance is pretty much a kind of ignorance, you would say, because I can love somebody. I can love somebody and not accept everything that they do. There are people that I know that I am not friends with in any way. I don't like them, but I still love them. I still want them to do well in life. I still want them to succeed in life, and I ultimately want them to get to heaven. I don't hate anybody. I don't look at anybody and say I don't love that person.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, there's a Bible verse that we need to, I think, incorporate in this whole thing, and that if you don't accept an individual in the way that they are acting and everything, and if you don't accept that, that's not considered to be loving. You know, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, what we call the love chapter, right? I think it's important for us to emphasize verse number 6, because as he's going through this definition or characteristics of what biblical love is all about, he says, love does not rejoice in iniquity,
But rejoices in truth.
but rejoices in the truth. Now, what does that mean? Anything that is against God's will, we do not supposed to rejoice in it, but God says this is what biblical love is all about. And this is coming from the one according to 1 John 4, verse 8. In our last episode, we were talking about how God is the definition or the existence of love. If he is love, according to 1 John 4, 8, and God tells us that love does not rejoice in iniquity, but it rejoices in the truth, how can we say that that's not being loving if you don't accept any and every type of attribute that somebody has, depending on, I mean, it doesn't even depend on who they are, how they're acting, or anything like that. If you don't accept them, you're not being loving. I mean, who's the standard in that type of aspect?
And try to make it fit our standards rather than God's standard. You know, continuing on with love is acceptance. To go with that, people tell us that if you don't accept that person, you hate that person. You don't accept every single thing about that person, you hate it. But then, at the same time, people will say that love trumps hate. And they say this as if, you know, you can love people to love. You can love people enough to love them, which I believe that's a true statement. I do believe that the general statement, love trumps hate, is a true statement. But if you're superseding that statement with, if you don't accept someone, you don't love them, it's a contradicting statement.
And it really comes down to being contradicted, because whenever you're wanting to now start making stipulations that qualify that, then it can either be right or wrong depending on what the stipulation is. If you're going to try to start throwing in acceptance into the whole point, basically what you're doing is that you are now not being acceptable to my acceptance. You see how contradictory that is?
Oh, yeah.
Because they're saying that you don't love me, but I love you. But if you're going to love somebody else, you've got to be tolerant of who they are and accepting of who they are. But you're not acceptable and tolerant of what I believe. So it's absolutely contradictory.
It is.
One of my friends said it once, they're intolerant of my intolerance. And that's really what it comes down to being. And so we've got to be very careful on what grounds we're actually basing this whole love aspect on.
Exactly. And the last thing that I really hear today is it's not so much acceptance, but really with where we stand when there are groups that identify as something, or a group that stands for a specific reasoning. And I put in my notes, it's like if you don't align with X, then you hate Y. So let's talk about what we dealt with this past year. If you don't support Black Lives Matter, then you hate black people. If you don't support immigrants, whether they're here legally or illegally, then you hate all immigrants. If you don't support X, then you hate Y. And it puts a
comparing apples to oranges.
It puts a prerequisite, or it puts a limit of where you have to start loving before you can show where you end it. And we will get into that in just a second. But it tells us where we have to start with our love, and that's going to be our biggest problem with that statement right there. But it goes to show that someone has chosen their definition of where love should start in what they call a subjective, meaning it deals with each individual person, a subjective society, and it said that you must follow that subjective standard. So when we talk about that we have a subjective standard, well then, what would an objective standard be? What authority can we have regarding love, and where does it start and where does it end? But unfortunately,
here's the thing you got to think about too. If it's something that's going to be objective, it cannot contradict itself.
No, it can't. It absolutely can't.
And so whenever we're looking for what can actually be our objective standard, we've got to see it from all aspects. And if it contradicts even in one point, it cannot be an objective standard.
So if you got your Bible with you, just go ahead and open up to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, because that's where we're going to spend most of our time anyway. Because it's called the love chapter for a reason, and I love that Paul is the one that wrote this. You know, out of anybody that could have written it, it was Paul, the person that persecuted Christians, that killed Christians. But the person that wrote about love was the person that needed it the most. And that was Paul. So what is love? I know we discussed this a little bit last episode, but today we're going to go a little bit more into what love actually is. So we deal with the word agape anytime we read the word love, the Greek word agape, anytime we read the word love, and how it's attributed to us and how it's attributed to God. So, Wes, tell us a little bit about what love is and what it means.
Okay, so whenever you're dealing with the actual Greek word agape, what it means is that it does what is best for the other. So we're talking about something that has to have no prerequisites. It's something that is open. It's something that is given. And it's looking not at the individual themselves, but our interactions with the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about agape and looking at doing what is best for the other individual, he goes into a lot right here in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 that really defines really some things. Let's just read verses 4 through 7 real quick. Because he says right here, love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself, is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And the very first part of verse 8 says, love never fails. Now, when you think about each one of those characteristics that are given right there, one thing that is very eye-opening is that love cannot be present without the interaction of another.
Mm-mm.
So, I mean, it really comes down to really like, why did God make us and things like that? Because he loves us. He has to have an object in order to express his love towards, right? So, we're automatically talking about interaction with another. But love does not think about himself, but thinks about the other.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how deep does that get?
Oh, it gets pretty deep. It gets into what we call benevolence and charity, and even going even further than that, and pretty much sacrificing ourselves. But love is unconditional. Love is unconditional. Like you said, there's no prerequisites whatsoever. There's no requirements of which we are to say, all right, now that you've done this, I can now love you. There's no status. There's no on or off switch when it comes to love. There's no intensity. We can't just adjust the dial of I love you this much right now. But then a few hours later, hey, I love you so much more.
Because you did X, it has now changed the way I love you. Love is not like that.
No. Well, now that you've done something against me, now that you've done something wrong against me, you took $5 out of my wallet. Well, guess what? I completely don't love you anymore. Or hey, you put.
Sorry about that, Noah.
Oh, no, thank you.
I'm joking.
I appreciate it. That's where my $5 bill went. You put $10,000 in my bank account. Oh man, I really love you now. I really love you. But the guy that took $5 out of my bank account, I don't like him so much.
Exactly.
We can forget that guy.
Yep.
And that's not what love actually is. And I love that last verse, verse 8, in the beginning of it. I know your version says love never fails, which you're in the New King James, right? And I love
the ESV say?
The ESV says love never ends.
Okay.
And I was looking at this. I was trying to think, what are the similarities between love never fails, love never ends? And I was looking at the Greek word for it. And in the definition for that Greek word, that means fail and ends there. It says it does not fall away, it doesn't pass away, it doesn't cease.
So it's forever.
It's forever. Meaning there's nothing that someone else should do that'll make us stop loving them.
Well, here's the thing about it. Because love does not think about himself, all right? And what is best for the other, our love that we have towards the other individual can never be affected. Because it is all determined upon us on how we view them.
Exactly.
So it doesn't matter what man may do to me. It doesn't matter what man may even try to do harm to me or even be exceptionally good to me, right? Is not able to change that. Now, if we do change that, then just like what 1 John talks about there, hating your brother, the love of God does not abide in you. Because love and hate cannot be on the same plane. It's on two opposite ends of the spectrum.
It even says that if someone says, I love God, but hates his brother, he's a liar.
That's it.
He's a liar. That's what he is. And, lying is
And who's the father of all lies?
Satan.
Satan, John 8:44.
And even of the 7 things that God hates, majority of those involve
the tongue.
Lying. Tongue.
Yep.
But
not a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence whatsoever. There's a reason that James tells us to bridle our tongues
Mm-hmm.
with a bit. There's a
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason that God tells us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But going with love doesn't care about what we want. It expects nothing in return. It has no prerequisites. I know the King James version translates agape as charity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I want to talk about a little bit right now. That love is benevolent.
Mm-hmm.
It expects nothing in return. We we expect nothing to be given back to us. It says the Bible says that if we lend somebody something, don't expect to get it back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's something that, as I was reading through 1 Corinthians 13, that it made me realize something. Love never stands alone.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, there is no love without being patient. There is no love without being kind.
Mm-hmm.
There is no love really without God.
Mm-hmm.
When we deal with other people, we can't be arrogant or rude against them, as it says in verses 4 and 5. Love is not arrogant or rude or puffed up. It's not irritable. Uh, Love bears, believes, hopes, and endures all things.
Mm-hmm.
Have we really ever thought about what that means? Have we ever thought about what it means to bear all things? What it means to believe all things, to hope all things, and endure all things?
You think the best of the individual.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think about any type of negative way. You don't. It's like you give your brethren the benefit of the doubt,
Mm-hmm.
unless it's otherwise given in another way. Give you reason not to believe that. But we should never have our relationship with our people unless they have given us reason not to. We are to take their word for it.
Mm-hmm.
We are to believe them. We are to bear with them. That, I mean, we expect that out of God,
Oh
right?
yeah.
We expect that out of God. But for
Mm-hmm.
some odd reason, whenever man comes into play, we say, no, 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 no. I'm not required by that, but God, I want you, and I require you to be that way towards me. I'm sorry. The way that the Bible defines it, if we don't get the horizontal right, talk about our relationship with man,
Mm-hmm.
we can never have our vertical relationship with God ever be right.
Nope, we can't. When it talks about bearing all things, I'm kind of reminded at the end of the book of Galatians, chapter 6, where it says to bear one another's burdens.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of love does that take in order to tell someone, give me what you're dealing with and I'll help you? Because now you're acting as what we would call a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying, let me help you deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of love that takes. When it talks about believing all things, the way that I heard this, and it might be wrong, but it might not because I still love the way that it goes anyway, is that it believes that a person is good before it believes someone is bad.
Mm-hmm.
It believes that someone can do the right thing. That if you hear about someone that they're doing something wrong, that they're in some kind of lifestyle that is not accepting to God, it believes that individual is doing what's right before it believes that they're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It uh
They
it
might just be misguided, that might need a little bit of direction.
mm-hmm.
So instead of automatically condemning that individual,
Mm-hmm.
you automatically stop and consider what has their lifestyle been before this?
Mm-hmm.
What might have contributed to why they are like this? It's trying to see people in their purest form and trying to mold them in that way. Now, is that not the same way God is?
Oh yeah.
He's trying to see us and he does see us in our natural form, one that is savable, one that, if properly directed, can change their life to be godly and righteous. He does still look, because we give him reason by our actions.
Mm-hmm.
by our sinful actions to have him see our sin. But the beautiful thing is, blessed is the man who the Lord does not impute sin, does not even take into consideration the sin that you're committing. See, it's able to be done. But it's the way in which we look at God. And the only way that we're able to do that is by God looking at us and seeing the best in us.
With verse 7, it kind of seems like a mirror. Excuse me. It bears all things, believes all things. Well, now we're starting to inverse what was just repeated. It hopes all things. It hopes for the best in people. You know, you can't hope in people if you don't believe in people.
Exactly.
You hope for the best for someone. Anybody that wishes anybody wrong in some regard, they can't truly say that they love somebody. And then you have endures all things. It's the inverse of bears all things. We can bear things for a little while, but there will come a point where it seems like it will be too much when someone overloads our plates with what they're dealing with. Well, love is going to endure all that. Love is going to push through. It's going to stand firm where it's at. It's not going to fall. It's not going to falter. It's going to keep pushing through, because at the beginning of verse 8 it says what? Love never fails or ends. It's not going to stop. It's going to endure everything.
So there's not a single thing that you can do to me that can ever change my love for you.
No.
Because love is there whether we want it to be or not. There you go.
It's as simple as that.
Exactly.
It's literally as simple as that. And we already talked about acceptance. I don't read the words acceptance in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I don't read acceptance. But what I do read is that love is for everybody. What does John 3:16 say?
For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life.
Exactly. Everybody has access to the same love. But you know, when it comes to the love of God, I love what Revelations 21 verse 4 says. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. What better example of love than that?
And the love will continue to go on even into eternity.
Exactly.
Ain't that beautiful?
Absolutely it
It
is.
is beautiful.
So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. It's a bit of a short one, but, you know, what's better than getting straight to the point?
Amen to that.
But anyway, thank you for listening. If you have a topic idea, send it to us. Let us know. If you enjoyed it, subscribe, like, follow, whatever platform that you're on. Thank you for listening, and God bless.
Have a good one, guys.